My father looked me dead in the eye and swore he would walk me down the aisle. But standing here, gripping my bouquet until my knuckles turn white. The only thing waiting for me is a sea of empty chairs. The groom's side is overflowing, but on my side, not a single soul showed up. At 33, I realized this silence wasn't a mistake. It was a weapon carefully loaded by the people who raised me. The morning of my wedding began with a silence that felt deceptively like peace. I woke up in the master suite of the Sterling Hotel in Briar Glen. The light filtering through the sheer curtains was a pale, watery gold, promising the kind of mild October day that brides pay extra for. For a few minutes, I just lay there, staring at the intricate crown molding of the ceiling, letting the reality of the day settle over me. I was 33 years old. I was marrying Ethan Hale, a man who loved me with a steady, uncomplicated quietness that baffled my chaotic family. And most importantly, I was finally doing this on my own terms, or so I thought. My phone sat on the nightstand. Face down, I reached for it, my heart doing a small, anxious flutter. I was expecting a text from my mother, Diane. Usually, she would have messaged me 3 times by 7 in the morning. She would have thoughts on the weather, thoughts on my hair, and a passive-aggressive reminder to stand up straight. I flipped the phone over. No messages from Mom. There was, however, a text from my father, Martin. It wasn't new. It was from 2 days ago, a message I had saved and reread perhaps 20 times. I will be there. I will walk you down. I promise. Zoe. I closed my eyes and breathed out, holding on to those words. My father had been a ghost in his own house for the last decade. A man slowly eroded by my mother's relentless management of our lives and the pressures of the Clark Family Outreach Foundation. But he had been clear about this. He had looked me in the eye during our last dinner and sworn he would defy Diane's cold shoulder to stand beside me. I sat up, pushing the duvet aside. I needed to start moving. The hair and makeup team was scheduled to arrive at the venue, the Alder and Ash Conservatory, in 2 hours. I checked my notifications again. There was a single new text from a number I did not recognize. Good luck today. You deserve a happy ending. I frowned. It was signed Cousin Sarah. That was odd. Sarah had my number. We had been texting about her bridesmaid dress just last week. I tapped on her contact info in my phone to compare the numbers. They were different. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. Maybe she had lost her phone? Maybe she was using a burner? It was a small thing, a tiny splinter of unease, but I brushed it away. People changed numbers. It happened. I dialed my mother. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. You have reached Diane Clark. Please leave a message. I hung up without speaking. I tried my father. The subscriber you are trying to reach is not available. My stomach gave a lurch, a sudden drop like missing a step on a staircase. I told myself to stop it. They were probably just busy. They were probably driving to the venue early to supervise the florists, because Diane could never trust a vendor to do their job without her hovering. I got out of bed and went to the window. Briar Glen looked pristine below me, a manicured collection of brick storefronts and tree-lined streets. It was a town that prided itself on appearances. Today, I was going to be the center of that appearance. I showered quickly, scrubbing away the residual anxiety with lavender soap. By the time I was dressed in my silk robe and heading down to the lobby to catch the shuttle to the conservatory, I had pasted a smile on my face. This was my day. I was the responsible one. I was the one who fixed things. If there was drama, I would handle it. But the drama was already waiting for me at the front desk of the Alder and Ash. The venue was stunning, a glass-walled cathedral of plants and polished stone. But as soon as I walked through the main doors, the venue coordinator, a sharp-eyed woman named Elise, intercepted me. She looked uncomfortable. "Zoe," she said, her voice lowered to a professional hush, "can I borrow you for a second before you go to the bridal suite?" "Sure," I said, keeping my smile fixed. "Is everything okay?" Elise guided me toward a small office off the main foyer. She closed the door behind us, shutting out the sound of the florists setting up the arch. We had a strange call overnight, Elise said, moving behind her desk, around 3 in the morning. It was from a woman claiming to be you. I blinked. Me? I was asleep at 3 in the morning. I assumed as much, Elise said, but she had your security questions. She knew the last 4 digits of the card on file. She was demanding that the final balance invoice be resent immediately to a different email address. She said the original email we had on file was compromised. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. What email did she want it sent to? Elise turned her monitor so I could see. It was a string of nonsense characters at a generic domain. We didn't send it. Of course, Elise assured me. We have a policy against changing billing details this close to the event without an in-person confirmation. But she was very aggressive. She said if we didn't send it, the check might bounce. I stared at the screen. The check? The final payment had been a cashier's check from my personal savings. It had cleared 3 days ago. The payment cleared, right? I asked, my voice sounding tinny to my own ears. Yes, Elise said. That is why it was so strange. I just wanted you to know. We flagged the account, so no changes can be made without your ID. Thank you, I said. It must have been a scammer. I'll check my bank. I walked out of the office, my legs feeling a little lighter than they should have. Someone had impersonated me. Someone who knew my security questions, my mother's maiden name, the name of my first pet, my father's middle name. I went up to the bridal suite. My bridesmaids were already there. A flurry of champagne and hairspray. They cheered when I walked in, but the sound felt muffled, like I was hearing it through water. Where is the family? Asked Jessica. My maid of honor. I thought your mom was coming early to critique the centerpieces. She is running late. I lied. I sat in the makeup chair. The stylist, a bubbly woman named Chloe, started working on my foundation. I closed my eyes, trying to center myself. I focused on Ethan. Ethan, waiting for me at the altar. Ethan, who didn't play games. My phone buzzed in my lap. It was a notification from our wedding website provider. Administrative access has been revoked. I frowned and opened the app. I tried to log into the back end of the site, where we manage the RSVPs and the seating chart. Password incorrect. I typed it again. Password incorrect. Hey, Jess, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. Can you pull up the seating chart on your phone? I just want to check something on table 5. Jessica tapped on her phone. She frowned. That is weird. It says I don't have permission to view the guest list anymore. It was working yesterday. I felt the air in the room grow thin. Someone had hacked the wedding website. Not just hacked it, but locked us out. I forced a laugh. Tech issues. I said, the site must be down. I'm sure it is fine. Chloe said, applying blush to my cheeks. You have the paper list, right? I nodded. I did. But the paper list didn't explain why someone was systematically erasing my digital footprint on the most important day of my life. The hours blurred, hair, makeup, the dress. Stepping into the white satin gown usually felt like a transformation in movies. But for me, it felt like putting on armor. I checked my phone constantly. Still nothing from Diane. Still nothing from Martin. Grant, my brother, wasn't answering either. My Aunt Lenora, who never missed a chance to send a frantic text about parking, was silent. It was 1 hour before the ceremony. The guests were starting to arrive. I moved to the window of the bridal suite, which overlooked the ceremony space. The alder and ash conservatory was a long rectangular space. Rows of gold Chiavari chairs were arranged on either side of a white runner. I watched as people filed in. I recognized Ethan's family immediately. His parents, his sisters, his cousins from Ohio. They were filling up the right side of the aisle. A block of navy suits and floral dresses. They looked happy. They were laughing. I looked at the left side, the bride's side. It was empty. There were 5 rows of chairs reserved for family, front row for parents and siblings, second row for aunts and uncles, 3rd through 5th for cousins and close family friends. They were empty. Maybe they are stuck in traffic, Jessica said, coming up behind me. There is that construction on Route 9. I checked the time. 45 minutes to go. I turned away from the window. I need a water, I said. I sat on the velvet sofa, my hands trembling. My phone buzzed. I am so sorry. Zoe, I didn't realize. We love you. It was from my cousin Mike. Didn't realize what? I typed back instantly. Mike, where are you? No response. Another text came through. Aunt Clara. So sorry to miss it. I didn't realize until today. Hope it is beautiful. I stared at the screen. The wording was almost identical. I didn't realize. I stood up. I couldn't sit there. I needed to know what was happening. I walked out of the suite, ignoring the protests of the stylist who wanted to touch up my lipstick. I went to the balcony that overlooked the lobby. Below, the guests were mingling before entering the main hall. It was a sea of Ethan's friends and family. I scanned the crowd for a single familiar face from my life. My college roommate was there. My coworker from the library was there. But my blood relatives? The people who shared my DNA? The people who had dominated every holiday, every birthday, every life decision for 33 years? Gone. I saw one of the ushers, a young guy named Kevin, looking confused near the entrance. He was holding the guest book. He looked up, saw me, and looked away quickly, as if he had seen something he shouldn't. I went back into the suite. 10 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. It was the usher. Kevin. He looked terrified. Ms. Clark? He said. Yes? I just wanted to ask, he stammered. Is there a second ceremony time? My heart stopped. What? It is just that nobody is sitting on the left side, he said, and a few people asked me if the bride's family was coming to the later show. I didn't know there was a later show. There is no later show. Kevin, I said, my voice ice cold. There is one wedding, right now. He nodded, looking like he wanted to dissolve into the carpet. Right. Okay. Sorry. He left. I looked at Jessica. She was staring at her phone, scrolling frantically. What is it? I asked. Nothing. She said too quickly. Show me. She hesitated, then turned the screen toward me. It was Instagram. One of Ethan's cousins had posted a photo of the ceremony space. The caption read, "Bride's side is empty? Drama?" I felt my face burn. It wasn't just a private rejection. It was a public spectacle. They weren't just not coming. They were making sure everyone knew they weren't coming. The door opened again. This time it was the officiant, Reverend Miller. He looked grave. Zoe, can we have a word? I nodded. Everyone out. I said to the bridesmaids, please. They filed out, casting worried glances at me. Reverend Miller closed the door. He held a piece of paper in his hand. Zoe, I received an email about 20 minutes ago. He said, it was flagged as urgent. It's from your father. I snatched the paper from him. It was a printout of an email from Martin Clark, private@email.com. Subject, emergency, delay ceremony. Reverend Miller, please delay the start of the ceremony by 2 hours. We are dealing with a severe family medical emergency. We are at the hospital but are on our way. Do not start without us. We will be there. Please keep this private to avoid panicking the guests. Signed, Martin. I stared at the email address. Martin Clark Private. My father barely knew how to use his standard email. He didn't have a private one. And the phrasing, severe family medical emergency, it was vague, calculated. This isn't his email, I whispered. Are you sure? Reverend Miller asked gently. If there is a medical emergency, if there was an emergency, my mother would have called you. I said, she would have called me. She would have called Ethan. She wouldn't send an email to the officiant 20 minutes before the start time. I looked at the timestamp. It was sent from a mobile device. This is a lie, I said, crumpling the paper. They aren't at the hospital. Zoe, if they aren't here, maybe we should wait, he suggested. No, I said. The door opened and Ethan walked in. He shouldn't have been there. Bad luck to see the bride and all that. But the look on his face told me he didn't care about superstition. He looked furious. I saw the empty seats, he said, coming straight to me. Zoe, What is going on? They aren't coming, I said. The words tasted like ash. He looked at the paper in my hand. What is that? I handed it to him. He read it, his jaw tightening. Do you believe this? He asked. No. Then we postpone, he said firmly. We tell everyone there is an emergency. We clear the room. We figure this out. I am not letting you walk out there to a room half full of people whispering about your family. He reached for my hand. His grip was warm, solid. We can do it next week, he said. We can do it at the courthouse. I don't care. But I am not letting them humiliate you. I looked at him. I loved him so much in that moment. He was willing to cancel thousands of dollars of event planning just to save my pride. But then I thought about my mother. If I canceled, she won. If I ran away, she won. This was a power play. This was her way of saying that without the Clark family presence, I was nothing, that I couldn't function without their approval. If I postponed, the story would be that I couldn't handle the pressure, that I had a breakdown. No, I said. Zoe, no. Ethan. I pulled my hand away and smoothed the front of my dress. I am not postponing. We are getting married. Today, right now. But your dad? My father promised he would walk me down the aisle, I said, my voice trembling with a rage I hadn't known I possessed. If he isn't here, that is his choice. But I'm walking down that aisle. Are you sure? Ethan asked. I am sure. Go to the altar. Ethan, wait for me. He looked at me for a long moment, searching my face for cracks. Then he nodded. Okay, I will be there. He left. Reverend Miller followed him. I was alone in the suite. I walked to the full-length mirror. I looked at myself. The dress was beautiful. The veil was delicate. I looked like a bride. I took a deep breath. I picked up my bouquet. It was white roses and eucalyptus. I gripped the stems so hard I felt the wire tape digging into my palms. I walked out of the suite. I walked down the stairs. I walked to the double doors of the conservatory. The music started. It was the string quartet version of Can't Help Falling in Love. The coordinator signaled the bridesmaids. They went first, one by one. I watched them disappear through the doors. Then it was my turn. The coordinator looked at me with pity. That was the worst part. The pity. Ready? She whispered. I nodded. She opened the doors. The air in the room changed instantly. I stepped into the doorway, and 500 heads turned. The gasp was audible. It was a low, sucking sound, the sound of air leaving the room. They weren't looking at my dress. They were looking at the space beside me, the empty space where my father should have been. I kept my chin up. I locked my eyes on Ethan, who was standing at the end of the runner, looking only at me. I took the first step. Click, click, click. The sound of my heels on the marble floor was deafening. I walked past the first row of guests. I saw the confusion on their faces. I saw the whispers starting behind hands. I looked to my left. The first 5 rows were empty. Just gold chairs gleaming under the skylights. No mother, no father, no brother, no aunts, no cousins. It was a void, a physical manifestation of my abandonment. I felt a tear hot and sharp in the corner of my eye. I refused to let it fall. I gripped the bouquet harder. My knuckles were white. My arms were shaking. Left foot, right foot. I passed the empty rows. I saw the usher, Kevin, standing against the wall, looking down at his shoes. I reached the altar. Ethan stepped forward. He didn't wait for the officiant to say anything. He stepped off the riser and met me at the bottom of the aisle. He took my hand. You are here, he whispered. I am here, I said. The ceremony was a blur. I said the words. I exchanged the rings. But part of me wasn't there. Part of me was still standing in the doorway, looking at the empty chairs, trying to understand how my father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, the man who read me stories every night, could do this. When we turned to face the crowd as husband and wife, the applause was loud, but it felt forced, overcompensating. We walked back up the aisle. I didn't look at the empty seats this time. I looked straight ahead. The reception was worse. The cocktail hour was torture. Every conversation was a minefield. People tried to be polite. They said things like, "It's so intimate," and "You look stunning." But their eyes kept darting to the empty tables. Someone had removed the place cards from the family tables, probably the coordinator trying to be helpful. But that just left gaping holes in the floor plan. I went to the bathroom to breathe. As I was washing my hands, 2 women walked in. They didn't see me in the alcove. "So weird, right?" one of them said. "I heard the dad is in legal trouble." "No, I heard the mom hates the groom." The other said, "But for nobody to show up? That is cold. The bride must have done something huge. You don't ghost your own daughter unless she really screwed up." I waited until they left. I stared at myself in the mirror. The bride must have done something huge. That was the narrative. My silence was being filled with their assumptions. I went back out. I danced the first dance. I cut the cake. I smiled until my face hurt. But every time I looked at the door, I expected him to walk in. Martin, disheveled, apologetic, explaining it was all a mistake. He never came. By 10 o'clock, the party was winding down. I was exhausted. My bones ached with the tension of holding myself together. Ethan and I went up to the honeymoon suite. He tried to be comforting. He ordered room service. He rubbed my shoulders. "I am going to kill them," he said quietly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I don't care who they are. I am going to make them regret this." I didn't have the energy to be angry yet. I just felt hollow. "I need to take this dress off," I said. I went into the bathroom and stripped off the gown. I put on a hotel robe. I felt like a stranger in my own skin. I walked back into the bedroom. Ethan was in the shower. I could hear the water running. There was a knock at the door. My heart jumped. "Dad?" I ran to the door. I didn't check the peephole. I pulled it open. The hallway was empty. I looked left, then right. Long, carpeted corridors. Empty. I looked down. There was a cream-colored envelope lying on the floor, half slipped under the door. I picked it up. It was heavy stock. But there was no stamp, no hotel logo, just my name, written in blue ink. Zoe. I knew that handwriting. It was jagged, slanted to the right. The loops on the O were distinct. It was my father's handwriting. My hands shook as I tore it open. I expected an apology. I expected an explanation. The car broke down. Mom got sick. "I'm so sorry." There was a single sheet of paper inside. "Zoe, please don't go home." "Not yet." I stared at the words. "Please don't go home." That was it. No, "I love you." No congratulations. Just a command. I stepped out into the hallway, barefoot. "Dad?" I called out. Silence. I looked at the note again. It didn't make sense. If he was close enough to slip this under my door, why didn't he knock? Why didn't he stay? And then I realized something that made the hair on my arms stand up. To get to this floor, you needed a key card. The elevators were locked. The stairwells were alarmed. My family hadn't just skipped the wedding. My father, or someone with his handwriting, was in the hotel. They were watching me. I went back inside and locked the door. I slid the deadbolt home. I leaned against the wood, clutching the note to my chest. The silence of the morning had been deceptive. The silence of the empty chairs had been painful. But this silence? The silence of the hallway? This silence was dangerous. I looked at the note one last time. Please don't go home. I wasn't sure I had a home to go back to anymore. I stood in the hallway of the Sterling Hotel, the carpet rough against my bare feet, staring at the piece of paper in my hand. The hallway was silent. A long tunnel of cream and gold that felt less like a luxury hotel and more like a vacuum where sound went to die. I had expected an apology. I had expected a frantic scrawl explaining a flat tire, a heart attack, a misunderstanding. I had expected my father, Martin Clark, to be the man I thought I knew, flawed, perhaps a bit beaten down by my mother, but ultimately loving. I was wrong. I unfolded the note again. The handwriting was definitely his. I knew the way he crossed his T's, a sharp, upward slash that always looked like he was in a hurry, but the words were not the words of a father missing a wedding. They were the words of a man sending a distress signal from inside a bunker. If they are silent, it is because someone told them to be. Beneath that chilling sentence was a phone number I did not recognize. No area code that matched our family plans. And then, at the very bottom, a final instruction that made my stomach turn over. Ask about the second invitation. The door behind me opened. Ethan stood there, a towel wrapped around his waist, water still dripping from his hair. He looked at me, then at the empty hallway, then at the paper in my hand. His expression shifted from concern to a hard, protective alertness. "What is it?" he asked. "Who was at the door?" "No one," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Just this." I handed him the note. He read it, his brow furrowing. "The second invitation?" he repeated. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," I said, "but I'm going to find out." I walked back into the room, my mind racing. The humiliation of the empty chairs was fading, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. This wasn't just pettiness. My mother, Diane, was capable of pettiness. She was capable of the silent treatment. She was capable of making me feel small. But she wasn't capable of silencing 50 relatives unless she had a mechanism, a tool, the second invitation. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. It was past midnight. Normal etiquette said you didn't call people past midnight, but normal etiquette also said you showed up to your niece's wedding. I pulled up Aunt Lenora's number. Lenora was my father's sister. She was soft-hearted, anxious, and terrified of my mother, if anyone would crack. It was her. I hit dial. It rang, and rang, and rang. I was about to hang up when there was a fumble of noise, and a breathless, teary voice answered. "Zoe? Aunt Lenora." I said, "Oh, God, Zoe," she sobbed. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I have been sitting here crying for hours. Uncle Bob told me not to answer. But I saw your name and I just couldn't." "Where were you?" I cut in. I didn't want her tears yet. I wanted facts. "Where were you today?" "Lenora? I was at the wedding," she wailed. "We all were." I froze. I looked at Ethan, who was watching me closely. "What do you mean, you were at the wedding?" I asked, my voice steady. "I was at the wedding. You were not there. The chairs were empty. We were at the Brighton Assembly Hall," Lenora cried. "We were there at 2:00, just like the invitation said. We waited for hours. Zoe, we waited until the staff told us the reservation had been canceled." My blood ran cold. The Brighton Assembly Hall was a sterile, corporate event center on the other side of town. It was miles away from the Alder and Ash Conservatory. "Lenora," I said, trying to keep the shaking out of my voice, "read me the invitation. Do you still have it?" Yes, I have it right here on the counter. I have been staring at it, trying to figure out what happened." "Read it?" I heard the rustle of heavy paper, "together with their families." She read, her voice hitching. "Zoe Elizabeth Clark and Ethan James Hale invite you to celebrate their marriage. Saturday, October 14th. 2:00 in the afternoon, the Brighton Assembly Hall." She stopped. "Keep reading." I said, "Is there anything else?" "Yes," she said. "At the bottom, it says, 'The couple requests privacy prior to the ceremony. Please refrain from contacting the bride or groom directly as they prepare for their special day. All inquiries should be directed to the wedding planner.'" I closed my eyes. It was perfect. It was diabolical. "Who was the wedding planner listed?" I asked. "It just gave an email," she said. events@clarkoutreach.org. I ended the call. I didn't say goodbye. I couldn't. I looked at Ethan. "They didn't ghost me," I said. "They were sent to the wrong place, and they were told not to call me." Ethan took the phone from my hand. He looked furious. "Someone forged invitations? Do you know how much effort that takes? You have to design them, print them, mail them, and you have to have the mailing list," I added. The only people who had the full family mailing list were me and my mother. I took the phone back. I needed to be sure. One data point wasn't a pattern. It was an anomaly. I needed a pattern. I called Cousin Mike. He answered on the second ring, sounding drunk and angry. "Zoe, what the hell?" he said. We sat in that hall for 3 hours. Mom is furious. She says you did this to spite Aunt Diane. Read me your invitation. Mike, I said. He paused. What? Just read it? He went to find it. When he came back, the details were different. The Brighton Assembly Hall. He read, 3 o'clock? 3 o'clock? Lenora's had said 2. I called Uncle Robert. His invitation said the venue was the Grandview Hotel in the next county over. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the pieces clicking together in a horrific mosaic. It wasn't just one fake invitation. It was multiple versions, customized to scatter the family across the city like debris. It was designed to create maximum confusion. If Lenora showed up at 2 and Mike showed up at 3, they wouldn't even see each other to compare notes until it was too late. And the note about requesting privacy ensured that when they were confused, they wouldn't call me. They would sit there, stewing in their annoyance, respecting my wishes while I walked down the aisle alone. This wasn't a prank. This was a military operation. Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. It is Mia, he said. His sister. Put it on speaker. Mia? Ethan said. Ethan, are you with Zoe? Mia's voice was sharp, efficient. She was a lawyer, and she sounded like she was in discovery mode. I am here. Mia, I said. Okay, listen, she said. I was talking to the caterer while we were packing up the leftovers. I thought you should know something. They almost didn't show up today. What? I said. They got an email this morning. Mia said. At 6 o'clock. It came from an address that looked like yours. ZoeClarkWeddings@gmail.com. It was a formal cancellation notice. It said the wedding was off due to unforeseen circumstances and that they should not come. I felt the room spin slightly. Why did they come? I asked. Because Mom called them at 7 to check on the appetizers. Mia said, the manager mentioned the cancellation, and Mom went nuclear. She told them if they didn't have a truck in the driveway in 20 minutes, she would sue them into the Stone Age. I looked at Ethan. His mother had saved the food, but the florist? The DJ? I asked the DJ too. Mia continued. Same thing. He got a cancellation email. He only came because he knows Ethan from college and thought it was weird you wouldn't call him personally. Zoe. Someone tried to wipe the vendors off the board this morning. Thank you. Mia, I said. I hung up. I felt sick, physically sick. This was why the billing issue happened at the venue. It was a multi-pronged attack. Isolate the bride, confuse the family, cancel the services. And my father knew, if they are silent, it is because someone told them to be. I dialed my father's number again. I needed to hear his voice. Even if he didn't answer, I needed to hear his voicemail greeting. I needed to hear the awkward way he said, you have reached Martin. Leave a message. The line clicked. The number you have dialed has been changed, disconnected, or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error. I dropped the phone onto the duvet. He is gone. I whispered. What? Ethan asked. His voicemail. It changed. It is the automated one now. Like he canceled his service, or someone canceled it for him. I stared at the wall. My father was the kind of man who had kept the same phone number for 20 years. He didn't change numbers. He didn't disappear. Unless he was made to. Anger, hot and sudden, flooded my chest. It burned away the fear. I grabbed the phone again. There was one person who held the keys to this. One person who had the mailing list, the organization, and the sheer force of will to pull this off. I dialed Diane. It was 1 a.m. She would be awake. She never slept when there was a crisis, and she certainly wouldn't sleep after orchestrating one. She answered on the first ring. Hello? Zoe. Her voice was calm, eerily, impossibly calm. There was no sleep in it. No worry. It was the voice she used when she was chairing a board meeting for the Clark family outreach. Where is he? I asked. I assume you are calling to apologize for the spectacle you caused. She said smoothly. Walking down the aisle alone? It was very dramatic. I suppose that is what you wanted. Attention. I gripped the phone so hard my hand cramped. Don't do that, I said. Don't spin this. I know about the invitations. Mother, I know about the Brighton Assembly Hall. I know about the cancellation emails to the vendors. I know you blocked them from coming." There was a pause on the other end. A long, heavy silence. "You are hysterical," she said finally. "You sound just like your father when he gets in one of his moods." "Where is he?" I repeated. "His phone is disconnected. He is taking some time away." She said, "He needed a break. From you? From the stress? That is a lie." I said, "He left me a note." Another pause. This one felt dangerous. "A note?" she asked. Her voice dropped an octave. "What note?" "He was at the hotel." I said, "He slipped it under my door. He told me everything." I was bluffing. The note didn't tell me everything. It only gave me a thread. But I needed to shake her. There was a rustle of movement on her end. I heard the click of a lighter. She was smoking. She only smoked when she was losing control. "If he was at the hotel," she said slowly, "then he is more unwell than I thought. We have been worried about his mental state for months. Zoe, the paranoia, the delusions. He is not delusional." I said, "He promised to walk me down the aisle. And yet, he didn't." She said, "Because he realized, just like I did, that we couldn't support this union, not after what you did." I blinked. "What I did? What are you talking about?" I asked. "What did I do?" She sighed, a sound of profound disappointment. "Don't play innocent. Zoe, it is beneath you. I assumed you didn't want us there after you betrayed the family." "I betrayed the family?" I almost laughed. "I moved out. I got a job as a librarian. I got engaged to a man you think is too middle class. That is not betrayal. That is growing up. It goes deeper than that," she said darkly. "You authorized it. Don't pretend you didn't." "Authorized what?" I shouted. But she didn't answer. "I am done discussing this," she said. "We are protecting the foundation. We are protecting our legacy. If you want to continue this tantrum, do it alone, but do not come to the house." "Why?" I asked. "Are you hiding him there?" "The locks have been changed," she said. "The security system has been upgraded. Your code will not work. There is nothing for you to see here." She hung up. I stared at the phone. "You authorized it." What could I possibly have authorized? I hadn't signed anything for the family business in years. I had deliberately kept my finances separate. Ethan was watching me. What did she say? She said I betrayed the family. I said, "She said I authorized something, and she changed the locks on the house." I stood up. I couldn't stay in the room. I felt trapped. "I need air." I said, "We got dressed in silence. Jeans, sneakers, hoodies. The wedding clothes lay in a pile on the floor. Discarded costumes from a play that had turned into a horror movie. We went down to the lobby. The night shift concierge was at the desk. A young man with glasses named David. He looked up as we approached. "Mrs. Hale?" he said. The name sounded foreign. "Mrs. Hale?" "Yes," I said. "I am glad you are still here," he said. "I was confused earlier. There was a gentleman asking for you." Around 6 o'clock, my heart hammered against my ribs. "What gentleman?" I asked. Older, gray hair, looked a bit distraught. To be honest, he was wearing a brown jacket, my father's favorite jacket. "What did he say?" I asked, leaning over the counter. "He asked for your room number," David said. "He said he was your father. But when I checked the system, there was a note on your file." "A note?" "Yes. It said you had checked out early and left strict instructions not to be disturbed by family." I stared at him. "I didn't check out." I said, "I was at my reception." "I know," David said, looking apologetic. "That is why I was confused. But the note was entered by a manager. I couldn't override it. I told him you were gone." He looked devastated. He left a minute later. "Who entered the note?" Ethan asked. David checked his screen. It was logged under the general manager's ID, but, well, the GM wasn't here at 6. He left at 4. Someone had accessed the hotel system. Someone had physically come to the hotel, or hacked it, to ensure that even if my father got past the fear, he couldn't get to me. "Thank you." "David, I said. We walked out into the cool night air. The streetlights of Briar Glen hummed overhead. It was a beautiful town. Perfect lawns, perfect fences, and underneath it, rot. My phone buzzed again. It was a text message. It was from Sarah, my college roommate and bridesmaid. She worked as an assistant manager at the First National Bank of Briar Glen, the bank where my family held all their accounts. Zoe, are you awake? I shouldn't be telling you this. I could get fired. But I heard about the wedding, about nobody showing up. I typed back instantly. I am awake. What is it? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I was processing checks in the night drop. There is a cashier's check here, a big one, $50,000. It is drawn from the Clark Family Outreach operating account. I frowned. My parents moved money around all the time. That wasn't news. And, I typed, the check is made out to a shell company I have never heard of. Sarah wrote, but that is not the weird part. The withdrawal slip attached to it? It lists the authorizing officer as you. I stopped walking. Ethan bumped into me. What? He asked. I showed him the screen. I didn't authorize anything. I typed, my fingers shaking. It has your signature. Zoe, Sarah replied, or a really good copy of it, and it is dated 3 days ago. If the auditors see this, and the money is going somewhere shady, it looks like you are the one embezzling from the charity. I felt the blood drain from my face. You authorized it, Diane had said. They weren't just isolating me, they were framing me. I looked at Ethan. The fear in his eyes mirrored my own. They are setting me up. I said, if I make a scene, if I try to expose them, they pull this thread. They show the world that Zoe Clark, the unstable daughter, stole $50,000 from orphans and runaways. But why? Ethan asked. Why destroy you? You are their daughter. Because I was leaving. I said, because I was marrying you. Because I wasn't under their thumb anymore. And my father, he must have found out. He tried to warn me. He tried to reach me. And they stopped him. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the note. The paper was soft now, worn from my gripping it. There was only one thing left to do. I dialed the number at the bottom of the note. It rang once, twice, a click. Zoe Clark? The voice was deep, gravelly. It sounded like a man who had smoked too many cigarettes and seen too many bad things. Who is this? I asked. The man didn't answer my question. Your father told me you would be brave. He said, where is he? I demanded. Is he with you? No, the man said. He isn't with me, and if you are smart, you won't be looking for him yet. You will be looking for the leverage. I am looking at a text message about a forged check. I said, is that the leverage? That is just the appetizer. The man said, listen to me carefully. Zoe, your father hired me because he knew he was running out of time. He knew they were building a cage for you. Who are you? I asked again. My name is Calvin Rusk. He said, I am a private investigator, or I was, until your father's retainer check cleared. Now I am the only friend you have in this town who isn't lying to you. I looked at Ethan. He was mouthing the name, Calvin Rusk. He nodded. He had heard of him. Rusk was known in Briar Glen, a fixer, a man who operated in the gray areas. What do I do? I asked. You have a choice. Calvin said, you can go on your honeymoon. You can get on a plane to Hawaii and forget you have a family. They will let you go. As long as you stay quiet, they will eat the $50,000 as the cost of doing business. And if I stay? I asked. Calvin paused. I could hear the sound of a siren in the background on his end. If you stay, he said, you are going to find out exactly why your mother runs a charity that brings in millions but never seems to help anyone. But you need to decide right now. Zoe, you need to decide what you are willing to lose, because once we start this, they won't stop at empty chairs. I looked down the street. I could see the outline of the town hall. I could see the bank where my signature was sitting in a night drop box, incriminating me. I could see the dark windows of the law offices where my mother's friends worked. I thought about my father. I thought about him standing in the lobby of this hotel, wearing his brown jacket, being told I didn't want to see him, being told I had abandoned him. He had tried to fight for me. I gripped Ethan's hand. I looked into his eyes. I saw fear. Yes, but I also saw anger. He nodded. I am not going to Hawaii, I said into the phone. Good, Calvin said. Meet me tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, the coffee mill on 4th Street. Come alone, or bring the husband. But don't bring your phone. Why? Because, he said, his voice dropping low. If they can change your father's voicemail, they can certainly listen to your calls. The line went dead. I lowered the phone. I looked at Ethan. We are staying, I said. He pulled me into a hug, burying his face in my hair. We are staying. He agreed. I looked over his shoulder at the sleeping town of Briar Glen. It looked peaceful. It looked safe. But I knew better now. It was a battlefield, and I had just volunteered for the front lines. The coffee mill was a narrow, exposed brick establishment on 4th Street that smelled aggressively of roasted beans and damp coats. It was 9 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. By all rights, I should have been ordering room service in bed with my husband, laughing about the stress of the wedding planning being over. Instead, I was sitting in a corner booth with my back to the wall, watching the door like a fugitive. Ethan sat next to me, his hand resting on my knee under the table. His grip was tight, grounding. We had left our phones in the car, buried under the passenger seat. Wrapped in a sweater, it felt paranoid. It felt ridiculous. But then I remembered the silence of the empty chairs at the conservatory, and the feeling of ridiculousness vanished, replaced by a cold, hard knot of dread. A man walked in. He didn't look like a private investigator from a noir novel. He looked like a retired contractor or a tired high school football coach. He was wearing a faded navy windbreaker and a baseball cap pulled low. He ordered a black coffee, no sugar, and scanned the room. His eyes landed on me. There was no hesitation. He knew exactly who I was. He walked over and slid into the booth opposite us. He didn't offer a hand to shake. He placed a thick manila envelope on the table between us. "Zoe Clark," he said. His voice was the same gravelly baritone from the phone. "I am Calvin Rusk. This is my husband, Ethan." I said. Calvin nodded at Ethan. "Good. You will need a witness for this." He tapped the envelope. "I worked for your father for 3 weeks," Calvin said without preamble. "He contacted me through a burner phone. He was scared. He said he had found discrepancies in the foundation's ledger. But every time he tried to pull a file, he was blocked. He hired me to do a background check. Not on an employee. On you? On me?" I asked, recoiling. "Why would he investigate me?" "Because he found your name on documents he had never seen before," Calvin said. "He wanted to know if you were involved, if you were part of the scheme." My stomach dropped. My own father thought I was stealing from him. "He realized quickly you were not," Calvin added. Seeing the look on my face, "He realized you were the vehicle, not the driver." Calvin opened the envelope. He slid 3 pieces of paper across the sticky tabletop. "Look at the signatures," he said. I looked. The first document was a real estate authorization form. It gave permission for a limited liability company called West Haven Holdings to use my credit profile as a guarantor for a commercial loan. The date was 6 months ago. I looked at the bottom. Zoe E. Clark. The signature was looping and elegant. It looked exactly like mine. It had the same slant, the same way I crossed my Z. But then I looked closer. The period after the E was a tiny circle. I never made circles. I made dots. "It is a forgery," I whispered. "A really good one." "Look at the next one," Calvin said. The second document was a credit application for a line of credit in the amount of $200,000. Again, my signature. Again, the tiny circle. "And the third?" Calvin asked. "This is the one that scared Martin the most." I picked up the third document. It was titled, "Durable Power of Attorney for Financial Management." I read the legal jargon. It wasn't a medical power of attorney. It granted the designated agent full control over my assets, bank accounts, and real estate transactions in the event that I was temporarily unavailable or incapacitated. It defined incapacitated loosely, including periods of emotional distress or mental health treatment. The designated agent was Diane Clark. I felt the blood drain from my face. I never signed this. I said. My voice was shaking. I would never sign this. Look at the notary stamp, Calvin said. I looked at the bottom right corner. There was the embossed seal of a notary public. Linda Prentice. I know her. I said, Linda. She works at the front desk of the Clark Family Outreach. She answers the phones. She has known me since I was 12. She notarized these, Calvin said, which means she attested that she saw you sign them in person. She is lying. I said, she is an employee, Calvin corrected. She does what she is told. Ethan picked up the power of attorney form. His hands were trembling with rage. This is illegal, he said, his voice rising. This is fraud. This is kidnapping on paper. They could have locked you up in a facility for stress and taken control of everything you own. That was the plan, Calvin said calmly, or part of it. Your father found this in a filing cabinet in your mother's home office. He made copies. That is when he called me. He realized they weren't just using your credit. They were building a legal cage around you. I sat back against the booth, the noise of the coffee shop fading into a dull buzz. My mind was racing, replaying a dozen memories from the last year. I remembered my mother casually sliding papers across the kitchen table during Sunday brunch. Just insurance forms. Zoe, just tax updates. Sign here. Save me a trip. I always signed. I trusted her. She was my mother. She ran a charity. She was the pillar of Briar Glen. I remembered my father, months ago, pulling me aside in the garden. Keep your accounts separate. Zoe, don't let them merge your savings with the family trust. I had thought he was being paranoid. I thought he was just bitter about his marriage. I remembered the constant, insidious comments from Diane. You look tired. Zoe, are you managing? You know you have always been too emotional to handle big decisions. Let me handle the venue contract. Let me handle the bank. I had thought she was being controlling. I didn't realize she was building a case for my incompetence. I feel sick. I said, I feel stupid. You are not stupid, Ethan said fiercely. You trusted your parents. That is not a crime. It is a liability. Calvin said, in this town, it is a liability. Calvin took a sip of his black coffee. Your father was going to take these to the authorities. He said, he had an appointment with a federal investigator in the state capitol. The appointment was for last Friday, the day before the wedding. I said, he never made it. Calvin said, he went dark on Thursday night. That is when I got the message to back off. But Martin paid me in advance, and I don't like unfinished business. What do we do? I asked. Do we go to the police? Not yet, Calvin said. The Briar Glen police chief plays golf with the board members of the outreach. If you walk in there with photocopies, they will call your mother. She will say you're having a breakdown. She will pull out that power of attorney and say she is acting in your best interest. You need hard proof. You need something they can't talk their way out of. Calvin pulled a small notepad from his pocket. I did some digging on that LLC. West Haven Holdings. It owns a single property, a vacant lot in a development called West Haven Ridge. I have never heard of it. I said, you own a piece of it. Apparently. Calvin said, or the debt on it. The county clerk's office opens in 30 minutes. I suggest you start there. Find out what is attached to your name. He stood up. He left the envelope on the table. I can't be seen with you, he said. I am supposed to be off the case, but keep that phone number I gave you. If you find Martin, call me. He walked out. Ethan and I sat there for a long time. The envelope felt radioactive. We have to go. Ethan said finally. I nodded. I felt a heavy, suffocating shame. I was 33 years old. I was supposed to be independent. And yet, sitting there, I realized I had been a child in their eyes. Not a beloved child, but a dependent, an asset. We drove to the county clerk's office in silence. It was a sterile government building with linoleum floors and the smell of old paper. We went to the records terminal. I typed in my name, Zoe Elizabeth Clark. The screen populated. There were the usual things, my car registration, the marriage license application we had filed last week. And then, there it was, A lien. Mechanic's lien filed against property ID 04-992. Owner of record, West Haven Holdings. Guarantor, Zoe E. Clark. The lien was for $40,000 in unpaid contractor fees. I clicked on the details. The property was in West Haven Ridge, a subdivision that I vaguely remembered hearing about, a failed development project near the river that had stalled out years ago due to zoning issues. Why would they buy a dead property, I asked, and why put it in my name? Because if the project fails, the debt is yours, Ethan said, reading over my shoulder. And if it succeeds, the profit goes to the LLC. I finished, which I don't control, but there was something else, a second entry, dated just 2 weeks ago. Notice of dispute. I clicked on it. It was a formal document contesting the validity of the lien. It stated that the guarantor's signature was unauthorized and fraudulent. It was signed by Martin Clark. I stared at the screen, tears blurring my vision. He tried. I whispered. He actually tried. My father hadn't just disappeared. He had fired a warning shot. He had gone into the public record and declared war on his own wife's scheme. He filed this, Ethan said, pointing at the date. October 1st, 2 weeks ago. That is when everything started to go wrong with the wedding, isn't it? That is when the RSVPs started disappearing. He tried to stop them. I said, and they punished him, and then they punished me. I printed the documents. The printer whirred, spitting out the evidence of my father's love and my mother's betrayal. We walked out of the clerk's office into the bright sunlight. I felt different. The shame was receding, replaced by a cold, sharp anger. My father wasn't weak. He was brave, and he was missing because of it. We need to find someone who knows how the money moves. I said, Calvin said the notary was an employee. We need someone who isn't loyal to Diane. I thought about the staff at the Clark Family Outreach. Most of them were lifers, women who had worked for my mother for 20 years and worshipped the ground she walked on. They were part of the cult of Diane, but there was one who wasn't. Marisol. I said, Marisol Dent. She was a young accountant who had been hired a year ago. I remembered her because she was the only one who didn't treat me like a porcelain doll. She had been sharp, funny, and efficient. And then, 3 months ago, she had vanished. My mother said she wasn't a good fit. I pulled out my phone. I searched for Marisol Dent on social media. I found her profile. She was working at a tax preparation service in a strip mall on the edge of town. Let's go, I said. We drove to the strip mall. It was a depressing row of storefronts, a vape shop, a payday loan center, and quick tax solutions. We walked in. Marisol was sitting behind a laminate desk, typing on a laptop. When she looked up and saw me, her face went pale. Zoe, she said. Marisol, I said, we need to talk. She looked at the door, then at her boss in the back room. I can't talk to you, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. I signed an NDA, a very aggressive one. I don't care about the NDA. I said, I know about West Haven Holdings. I know about the forged signatures. My father is missing. Marisol, she froze. Missing? He didn't come to my wedding. I said, nobody did, because he found out what they were doing. Marisol stared at me. She looked terrified. But beneath the fear, I saw relief, the relief of someone who has been carrying a secret that is too heavy for them. Meet me out back, she hissed. 5 minutes. We waited by the dumpsters behind the strip mall. It smelled of garbage and stale cigarette smoke. Marisol came out the back door, checking over her shoulder. She was shaking. Is he okay? She asked immediately. Martin? I don't know, I said. I think they did something to him. He was the only one who listened, Marisol said, hugging her arms around herself. When I found the transfers, everyone else told me it was standard operating procedure. They said I didn't understand nonprofit accounting. But Martin, he looked at the spreadsheets. He saw it. What did he see? Ethan asked. The outreach raises millions, Marisol said. Galas, silent auctions, federal grants. It is supposed to go to housing assistance and food banks. But about 30% of it? It gets routed through shell companies, West Haven Holdings, Blue River Consulting, GCL Properties. And the names on the accounts? I asked. Yours, Marisol said, looking at me with pity. And your brother's, but mostly yours. Why me? I asked. Because Grant is on the board now, she said. He has fiduciary liability. You are a private citizen. If the IRS comes knocking, they see your name on the authorized user list. They see your signature on the withdrawal slips. Diane can claim she was deceived by her own daughter. She stays clean. You go to prison. I leaned against the brick wall, feeling the rough texture against my jacket. It was a setup, a long-term, carefully cultivated scapegoat strategy. Martin started asking questions in the board meetings. Marisol continued. He asked about the West Haven property. He asked why donor funds were paying for a contractor on a lot that has been empty for 5 years. Diane shut him down. She told him he was confusing the accounts, but after the meeting, he came to my desk. He asked me to print everything, and then you were fired. I said, I was let go, she corrected bitterly, with a severance package that came with a threat, if I talked. They would sue me for breach of confidentiality and destroy my reputation. She looked at me, her eyes wet. Your father isn't the bad guy. Zoe, he is the fall guy. Just like you. But he figured it out. And I think he was planning to blow the whistle. Thank you. Marisol, I said, be careful, she whispered. Your mother. She doesn't lose. Ever. We walked back to the car. My head was pounding. Grant. I said, what? Ethan asked. Marisol said Grant is on the board. She said his name is on some of the accounts, too. He is your brother, Ethan said. Do you think he knows? I don't know, I said, but I am going to find out. Grant lived in a modern condo downtown, a place my parents had bought for him as a graduation gift. He was the golden child, the one who followed the rules, the one who never made waves. I didn't call first. I just drove there. We buzzed the intercom. No answer. I buzzed it again, holding the button down. Finally, his voice crackled through. What? It is Zoe, I said. Let me up. There was a long pause. Then the buzzer buzzed. We went up to the 4th floor. Grant was standing in his doorway, wearing expensive sweatpants and a look of defensive irritation. You shouldn't be here, he said. Mom said, I don't care what Mom said, I snapped, pushing past him into the apartment. Ethan followed. Closing the door, Grant looked nervous. He looked at Ethan, then back to me. Look, I am sorry about the wedding, okay? He said, holding up his hands. It was complicated. Mom said you were having a crisis and we needed to give you space. Space? I laughed. A bitter, jagged sound. You didn't give me space. Grant, you gave me an empty room. You humiliated me. I didn't know nobody was going to show up, he protested. I thought some people were going. I was told the venue changed. Stop lying, I screamed. I had never screamed at my brother before. He flinched. I know about West Haven. Grant, I know about the shell companies. I know my name is on the paperwork. Grant's face changed. The irritation vanished, replaced by a flash of genuine fear. You know about that? I know everything. I bluffed. I know Dad found out. I know he tried to stop it. And I know you are sitting on the board while they use my credit to launder donor money. Grant paced the room, running a hand through his hair. It is not laundering, he said weakly. It is creative asset management. It is temporary. Mom said it protects the foundation's tax status. By framing me? I asked. No, not framing you. He stopped, looking at me with wide eyes. It is just putting assets in a safe harbor. You weren't using your credit. You didn't need it. We were building equity. It was supposed to be a nest egg for you eventually. Bullshit, Ethan said. He stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. If it was a nest egg, why forge her signature? Why hide it? Because she wouldn't understand. Grant shouted, She is Zoe. She gets emotional about money. She would have asked too many questions. Like Dad? I asked quietly. Did Dad ask too many questions? Grant went silent. He looked away. Where is he? Grant? I don't know, he mumbled. Mom said he went to the lake house to cool off. He is not at the lake house. I said, I checked. The security system is down. Grant looked at me, his resolve crumbling. He was weak. He had always been weak. I heard them arguing. He whispered, Thursday night, Dad was screaming. He said he was going to the feds. He said he wasn't going to let Diane ruin your life just to balance the books. And what did Mom say? Grant swallowed hard. She said, if Zoe marries him, we lose leverage. The room went dead silent. I felt a chill go down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Say that again. I said, she said if you marry Ethan, we lose leverage. Grant repeated. I looked at Ethan. He looked back at me, the realization dawning in his eyes. It wasn't just sabotage, I said, my voice trembling. It was strategy. As long as I was single, my next of kin was my parents. If I got sick, if I got incapacitated, like the power of attorney said, Diane was in charge. She could control my finances. She could hide the fraud behind my mental health issues. But if I married Ethan, he becomes your next of kin, Ethan said, his voice hard. He gets legal standing. He gets access to your accounts. He gets to make the medical decisions. If I married Ethan, the firewall they had built around me would crumble. Ethan would see the debts. Ethan would see the liens. Ethan would ask questions. That is why they tried to stop the wedding. I said, it wasn't because they hated you. Ethan, it was because you were a threat to their security clearance. They needed to isolate me. They needed to break me down so I wouldn't go through with it. Or, if I did, they needed to make sure I was so emotionally unstable that they could claim I wasn't competent. That is why they ghosted me, I said, to induce a breakdown, to make me look crazy in front of 500 people. Grant sank onto his couch, putting his head in his hands. I didn't know it was that bad, he said. I thought we were just delaying it. Mom said you needed time. You are a coward, Grant, I said. I turned to Ethan. We have to go. Where? Ethan asked. To a lawyer, I said, a real one, not one of Diane's friends. I looked back at my brother. He looked small, pathetic. If you hear from Dad, I said, tell him I know. Tell him I am not breaking. We walked out of the apartment. The elevator ride down felt like descending into a bunker. We have leverage now, too. I told Ethan as we walked to the car. What leverage? We know why they are scared. I said, they aren't scared of me leaving. They are scared of me growing up. I got into the passenger seat. I looked at the wedding band on Ethan's finger. It was a simple gold band. Yesterday, it had been a symbol of love. Today, it was something else. It was a shield, and I was going to use it to burn their house down. Monday morning did not bring the fresh start that Mondays are promised to bring. Instead, it brought the sterile, fluorescent-lit reality of a conference room in the law offices of Harmon and Associates. Paige Harmon was a woman who looked like she could dismantle a witness with a single raised eyebrow. She sat across from Ethan and me, her hands folded over a notepad that was already filled with her sharp, angular handwriting. She had listened to our story without interrupting, her expression shifting from professional curiosity to a grim, steely focus. You are in a very precarious position. Zoe, Paige said. Her voice was calm, but the words hit the table like stones. I know. I said, my family abandoned me. Paige shook her head. That is the emotional injury. I am talking about the legal injury. We are not dealing with a family dispute here. We are dealing with identity theft, fraud, and potential conspiracy. And the problem is, on paper, you look less like a victim and more like an accomplice. She slid a document toward me. It was a flowchart she had sketched while we spoke. If these signatures on the bank documents and the real estate forms are accepted as valid, she explained, then you are the guarantor for debts you do not control. You are the authorized officer for accounts that are moving nonprofit funds into private holding companies. If the IRS or the state attorney general investigates the Clark family outreach, they are going to find your name at the bottom of the money trail. But I didn't sign them. I insisted. Proving that is harder than you think. Paige said, especially when the notary is on their payroll and your mother holds a power of attorney that says she can act for you. She leaned forward. Here is the immediate risk. If this West Haven development fails, the creditors come for you. If the charity is audited, the federal investigators come for you. And if your mother decides that you are a liability, which, given the events of Saturday, she clearly does, she can use that power of attorney to freeze your personal assets, access your medical records, or even attempt to have you declared incompetent to manage your own affairs. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Incompetent. That was the word Diane loved. You are too emotional. Zoe, you are confused. What do we do? Ethan asked. His hand was resting on the back of my neck, his thumb rubbing a soothing circle that was the only thing keeping me grounded. We sever the limb to save the body, Paige said. We lock everything down. Today, right now. The next 3 hours were a blur of administrative violence. We didn't just change passwords. We scorched the earth of my digital life. I sat with a paralegal and went through every account I had, bank accounts, credit cards, email, social media. The security questions were the hardest part. What is your mother's maiden name? What is the name of your first pet? What street did you grow up on? These weren't security questions for me. They were keys that my mother held in her pocket. She knew the answers because she had created the life that the answers described. We changed them all. Mother's maiden name? I changed the answer to titanium. First pet? I changed it to apocalypse. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I set up 2-factor authentication on everything, routed to a new burner phone that Paige's office provided. I signed an affidavit revoking any and all powers of attorney, effective immediately, and Paige had it couriered to the county clerk and the Clark family outreach headquarters. Then came the address change. Do not use your home address, Paige instructed. Do not use your work address. Do not use a P.O. box in Briar Glen. We set up a secure mailing address at a private facility 3 towns over. By the time we left the office, it was late afternoon. The adrenaline that had fueled me through the meeting began to fade, leaving a hollow, aching exhaustion in its wake. I sat in the passenger seat of Ethan's car as we drove out of the parking lot. I looked out the window at the streets of Briar Glen. I saw the bakery where my father used to buy me bear claws on Saturdays. I saw the library where I worked. I saw the elementary school where I had played the lead in the 3rd grade play. And my parents had sat in the front row, beaming. I felt a sudden, crushing wave of grief. It wasn't just anger. Anger I could handle. Anger was hot and propelling. This was loss. I was mourning them. I was mourning the parents I thought I had. I realized then that the chaos of my family, the constant drama, the pressure, the guilt trips, had never been normal. I had spent 33 years thinking that love was supposed to be heavy. I thought that family was a debt you paid off in increments of obedience. I started to cry. Not the pretty, single-tear crying of the movies, ugly, gasping sobs that made my chest hurt. Ethan pulled the car over into the empty lot of a defunct garden center. He unbuckled his seatbelt and pulled me into his arms. I am sorry. I choked out. I am so sorry I brought this into your life. Stop, he said firmly into my hair. You didn't bring this. You survived this. There is a difference. Paige had given me homework. Document everything. She had said, create a timeline. Look for the pattern. That night, sitting at the kitchen table in our small apartment, I opened a fresh notebook. I started writing. 2015. I move out of the guest house. I remembered that day. Diane had cried. She said I was abandoning them. 2 days later, my car insurance was canceled by accident. I had to ask Martin for a loan to reinstate it. 2018. I get the promotion at the library. I remembered telling them over dinner. Diane had asked if it paid enough to justify the stress. The next week, she brought over paperwork for a family investment trust she wanted me to sign. I refused. A week later, my credit card was declined because someone had tried to charge $5,000 of office furniture to it. 2022. I meet Ethan. That was when the temperature changed. Diane didn't like Ethan. She said he was too simple, She said he didn't understand our world. I looked at the dates. I looked at the events. Every time I took a step toward independence, something broke. A car, a bank account, a relationship, and every time something broke, Diane was there with a solution. Let me handle it. Zoe. Just sign this. Zoe. Come back home. Zoe. It wasn't chaos. It was a leash. They yanked it every time I got too close to the fence. And marrying Ethan? That wasn't just stepping over the fence. That was cutting the leash. I need to see her, I said, staring at the notebook. Zoe. No. Ethan said from the sink where he was washing dishes. Paige said no contact. I need to look her in the eye. I said, I need to know if she even realizes what she is doing, or if she has lied to herself so many times she believes it. I texted her from my old number, the one I hadn't disconnected yet. Meet me at Pioneer Park, 1 hour. Alone, if you bring anyone. I leave. I didn't think she would come, but she did. Pioneer Park was a quiet stretch of green near the river, far enough from the town center to be private. I sat on a bench, my coat wrapped tight against the October chill. The wind was kicking up the fallen leaves, swirling them into little tornadoes of orange and brown. A black sedan pulled up to the curb. My mother stepped out. She was dressed impeccably, as always, a camel hair coat, a silk scarf. Sunglasses? She looked like she was arriving for a photo op, not a confrontation with her estranged daughter. She walked toward me, her heels clicking on the paved path. She stopped 5 feet away. She didn't sit. You look tired, she said. That was her opening move. Always. Attack the appearance. I am tired, I said. I have been spending a lot of time with lawyers. Her expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened slightly on her leather bag. That is a mistake, she said. Involving outsiders. It always complicates things. You forged my signature. Mother, I said, you took out loans in my name. You tried to ruin my wedding. I think things are already complicated. Diane sighed. She looked at the river, watching the water rush over the rocks. You are being dramatic, she said. We didn't ruin your wedding. We paused it. We tried to give you a chance to rethink a decision you were making in an emotional state. I stood up. The proximity made my heart race, but I forced myself to hold my ground. Where is Dad? I asked. He is safe, she said. Is he? Or is he locked away somewhere so he can't testify against you? Diane turned her head and looked at me over the rim of her sunglasses. You don't know what your father did, she said. Her voice dropped, losing its polished sheen for a fraction of a second. Then tell me, I challenged. Tell me what he did that was so terrible you had to humiliate us both. She took a step closer. Her perfume, expensive, floral, cold, filled the space between us. He was going to ruin us, she hissed. He was going to tear down everything we built, the foundation, the reputation, the legacy. He was going to go to the authorities and tell them lies about the accounting. They aren't lies. Are they? I said. Marisol told me about the shell companies. I saw the liens. You don't understand high-level finance. Zoe, she snapped. You never have. You are a librarian. You arrange books. You don't understand what it takes to keep an organization like ours afloat. So you used me. I said, you used my name. We protected the family, she shouted. It was the first time she had raised her voice. She composed herself instantly, smoothing her scarf. He chose you, she said quietly. The bitterness in her voice was shocking. It was raw and ugly. What? He chose you over all of us, she said. When push came to shove, when we needed to present a united front to the auditors, he refused. He said he wouldn't let you carry the risk. He said he would burn it all down before he let you get hurt. She looked at me with genuine disdain. He was willing to destroy 20 years of work for you, and that is why you hate me. I realized, not because I am messy, not because I am emotional, but because he loved me more than he loved the lie. You are confused, Diane said. Stepping back, the mask was back in place. You are upset. Go home, Zoe. Call off your lawyer. If you pursue this, you will find that you have very few friends left in this town. She turned and walked back to her car. She didn't look back. I watched her drive away. I felt cold, but it was a clarifying cold. I met Calvin Rusk an hour later. Ethan was with me. We met in the parking lot of the bowling alley, a place loud enough to mask conversation. Calvin looked tired. He had dark circles under his eyes. "I have something," he said. He handed me a tablet. "It took some doing," he said, "but I have a contact at the security company that services the Brighton Assembly Hall." He pressed play. The video was grainy, black and white, time-stamped Saturday, October 14th, 1:55 p.m. The camera angle showed the lobby of the Brighton Assembly Hall. I watched, holding my breath. The doors opened. People started pouring in. I recognized them. There was Aunt Lenora, wearing her blue dress. There was Cousin Mike, adjusting his tie. There was Uncle Robert. There were dozens of them. My family. They looked confused. They were checking their phones. They were looking around the empty lobby. Then, at 2 p.m. exactly, the doors opened again. Diane walked in. She wasn't wearing her mother-of-the-bride dress. She was wearing a sharp business suit. She walked into the center of the group. I couldn't hear the audio, but I could see the body language. She commanded the room. She held up her hands. The group went silent. She spoke for maybe 2 minutes. She looked sad. She touched her chest. She pointed to the door. I saw Lenora cover her mouth with her hand. I saw Mike look angry. I saw people hugging each other. Then Diane turned and walked out. The group lingered for a moment, looking dejected. Then, slowly, they started to disperse. They walked out the doors, heads down. "She told them you canceled," Calvin said. I looked up at him. "How do you know?" "Because I found one of the waitstaff who was working that day," Calvin said. He heard her. "She told them you had a severe panic attack. She said you had called off the wedding and fled the state. She said you didn't want a scene, and you specifically asked for everyone to leave quietly and not to contact you because you were fragile." I watched the screen again. I watched my mother weaponize her calmness like a knife. She didn't scream. She didn't drag me away. She just stood there, looked reasonable, and erased me. "They were there," I whispered. "They actually came. They didn't abandon you." "Zoe," Ethan said softly. "They were tricked. It didn't fix the hurt, but it changed the texture of it. I wasn't unloved. I was isolated." My phone buzzed. The burner phone. I jumped. Only Paige and Calvin had this number. I looked at the screen. Unknown caller. "Answer it," Calvin said sharply. "Put it on speaker." I pressed the green button. My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. "Hello?" There was static. Then a sound of heavy breathing. "Zoe?" My heart stopped. "Dad?" I screamed. "Dad, is that you? I'm sorry." "Zoe," the voice said. It was him, but he sounded wrong, rushed, strained, like he was running or hiding in a closet. "I tried to get to you. I tried. Where are you?" I cried. "Dad, tell me where you are." "I can't," he rasped. "They are listening. I just needed you to know I didn't leave you. Dad, please, if you hear this," he said, his voice dropping to a frantic whisper. "Don't trust—" Click, the line went dead. I stared at the phone. "Don't trust who? Diane? Grant? The lawyers?" I tried to call back. "Call cannot be completed as dialed." He called the burner. Calvin said. He looked spooked. "How did he get this number?" "I didn't give it to him." I said, "I just got it today." Calvin cursed under his breath. If he has this number, it means he has access to something, or someone gave it to him. I couldn't think about the logic. I could only feel the sound of his voice. "I didn't leave you." I sank down onto the asphalt of the parking lot. The adrenaline crashed. The anger crashed. I didn't scream. I didn't wail. I just started shaking. Ethan pulled me up. He didn't say anything. He just guided me to the car. We drove home. I sat on the kitchen floor. The linoleum was cold. I pulled my knees to my chest. Ethan sat behind me, wrapping his legs around mine, rocking me back and forth. I thought about the video. The empty chairs, the lies, the documents with my name on them, the voice on the phone. It was too much. It was a labyrinth designed to drive a rat insane. I may never know. I whispered. Know what? Ethan asked, his chin resting on my shoulder. I may never get the whole story. I said, I may never get a clean explanation. They are going to lie and hide and shred documents until there is nothing left but smoke. I realized then that chasing closure was a trap. If I waited for my mother to admit what she did, or for my father to explain everything, I would be waiting forever. I would be paralyzed. I don't want closure, I said, my voice steadying. What do you want? Ethan asked. I want facts, I said. I stood up. I wiped my face. I looked at the notebook on the table. The timeline of abuse disguised as love. I picked up the burner phone. I dialed Calvin. He answered on the first ring. Yeah? Get the records. I said, which ones? Calvin asked. All of them. I said, the Clark family outreach, the bank transfers, the emails. I don't care how you get them. Zoe, Calvin said, a note of warning in his voice. If we do this, if we pull the actual financials, we are going to expose the whole operation. Your family's name. It is going to be mud in this town, your father included. I closed my eyes. I saw my father's face. He chose you over all of us. If he was willing to burn it down for me, I said, then I have to be willing to hold the match. Okay, Calvin said. I will make some calls. I hung up. I turned to Ethan. We are going to destroy them, I said. He nodded. We are, he said. I walked to the window. The sun was setting over Briar Glen. It looked like a postcard, but I knew what was rotting underneath the floorboards, and I was about to rip them up, one by one. The legal machinery Paige Harmon set in motion was supposed to be a shield, but it felt more like kicking a hornet nest. On Tuesday morning, Paige filed formal preservation notices with the Clark Family Outreach, the bank, and the county clerk. These were legal demands requiring them to freeze all records, emails, chat logs, financial transfers, security footage. It was the first step in building a case for fraud and identity theft. The response was immediate, and it was vicious. I was at my new temporary apartment, a short-term rental Ethan had found in a complex on the edge of town, when a courier arrived. He didn't look like a standard delivery driver. He wore a suit. He handed me a thick linen-textured envelope with a wax seal. I opened it at the kitchen island. The letterhead was embossed in heavy black ink. Briar Glen Community Legal Partners. I read the first paragraph, and my breath hitched. Dear Ms. Clark, we represent the Board of Directors of the Clark Family Outreach. It has come to our attention that you are currently engaged in a campaign of harassment and defamation against a registered 501c3 charitable institution. Your recent allegations regarding financial impropriety are baseless, slanderous, and appear to be motivated by a personal family dispute. Be advised that if you continue to disparage the reputation of the outreach or its officers, we will pursue immediate civil action for damages. Furthermore, we are reviewing your potential liability regarding the unauthorized access of proprietary organizational data. They were threatening to sue me for exposing the fact that they stole from me. I looked at the signature at the bottom. Theodore B. Vance, Managing Partner. The name triggered a memory so sharp it made me nauseous. Theodore Vance, Uncle Ted. He wasn't my real uncle. Of course, he was the man who had sat at our Thanksgiving table for 20 years. He was the man who had taught me how to play chess in his study while my parents drank wine on the patio. He was the man who had given me a silver fountain pen for my high school graduation. He was my mother's oldest friend, and now he was the hammer she was using to crush me. I dropped the letter on the counter. The walls of the apartment suddenly felt very close together. I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. A silver sedan was parked 2 rows back. Was it watching me? I didn't know. Paranoia, once planted, grows fast. I realized then that I wasn't fighting a person. I was fighting an ecosystem. Diane didn't just have money. She had social capital. She had the lawyers, the bankers, the judges. She had built a fortress of influence around herself, and I was just a rogue element throwing pebbles at the gate. Ethan came home an hour later. He saw the letter. He saw my face. "We can't stay here," he said. I stiffened. "You want to run?" "That is what they want." "Ethan, they want to scare us off." "No," he said, pacing the small living room. "Running is when you leave because you are afraid. Moving is when you leave because the battlefield is rigged." He pointed toward the window. "Zoe, everyone in this town is compromised. The lawyer is her friend. The banker is her donor. The police chief is likely on the board. If we stay in Briar Glen, we are fighting in a cage they built. We need to get out of their jurisdiction, just for a while." I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that this was my town too. But then I looked at the letter from Uncle Ted. Unauthorized access. They were already spinning the narrative. "Okay," I said, "but not far. I need to be close enough to fight." We packed bags that night. We didn't tell anyone where we were going. We drove 30 miles north to a town called Linden Vale. It was a blue-collar town, gritty and unpretentious. The kind of place my mother would never visit because the coffee shops didn't serve oat milk. We checked into a generic motel near the highway. It wasn't romantic. It was safe. But I had one loose end to tie up before I let go of Briar Glen completely. I called Aunt Lenora. I didn't ask her to meet me. I told her I was coming to her house. I knew she would be home. Lenora never went anywhere on Tuesdays. She watched her grandchildren. I drove back into Briar Glen alone, leaving Ethan at the motel to set up our remote workstations. I pulled into Lenora's driveway. Her house was a modest ranch, cluttered with tricycles and garden gnomes. It looked innocent. Lenora opened the door before I could knock. She looked terrible. Her eyes were swollen, her face blotchy. She pulled me inside and locked the door behind me. "Zoe, you shouldn't be here," she whispered. "If Diane finds out, let her find out," I said, walking into her living room. "I am done hiding. Lenora, I know about the fake invitations. I know about the Brighton Assembly Hall, but I need to know the rest." Lenora sank onto her floral sofa, twisting a tissue in her hands. "It wasn't just the invitations. Zoe," she said, her voice trembling. "Then what was it? Why did nobody call me? Why did nobody text me when they got to the wrong venue?" "Because she told us not to," Lenora cried. She looked up at me, her eyes full of shame. 3 months ago, Diane started having dinners, small dinners, just family. She told us she was worried about you. She said you were having episodes. She said you were becoming erratic and financially unstable. "That is a lie." I said, "We know that now." Lenora said, "But she was so convincing. She had papers." "Zoe. She showed us credit card bills with thousands of dollars in debt. She showed us emails where you supposedly threatened her. They were forgeries." I said, "We didn't know." Lenora sobbed. "And then came the threats." "What threats?" Lenora looked down at her hands. "She told us that anyone who enabled your behavior would be cut off." "Cut off from what?" I asked. "Lenora, we are a family, not a payroll. It is not that simple." Lenora said, "You know it isn't. Uncle Robert's business loan? It is underwritten by the foundation. My grandson's tuition for that special needs school? The foundation pays it. Cousin Mike's job at the city planner's office? Diane got him that interview." I stared at her. I had known my family was entangled with the outreach, but I hadn't realized the depth of the dependency. My mother had turned acts of charity into leashes. She told us that if we contacted you, or if we supported your marriage to Ethan, she would pull the funding. Lenora whispered. She said she couldn't justify using foundation resources to support a family that didn't support the foundation's mission. "So you sold me." I said, "For tuition. For a loan?" Lenora flinched as if I had slapped her. We were scared. "Zoe? She said you were sick. She said the wedding was going to be a disaster and we needed to let you hit rock bottom so you would come home for treatment." "Treatment," I repeated. The word tasted like bile. "She wants to institutionalize me." Lenora nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I think so," she said. "She kept talking about a facility in Vermont. She said you needed rest." I stood up. I looked at my aunt. This woman who had babysitter me, who had baked me cookies. I didn't hate her. I just pitied her. She was a hostage who had fallen in love with the captor's rules. Thank you for telling me. I said, Zoe, wait, she called out as I turned to the door. Martin? He tried to stop her. I stopped. Tell me. At the last dinner, Lenora said. He stood up. He was drunk, I think, or maybe just exhausted. He threw his glass against the wall. He yelled at her. He said, I am not letting you sacrifice her to save yourself. And what did Diane do? Lenora shivered. She didn't do anything. She just looked at him, and she said, Sit down. Martin, you are making a scene. Do we need to adjust your medication? My blood ran cold. He doesn't take medication. I said, He didn't used to. Lenora said, But the last few weeks. He looked groggy, slow. I walked out of the house. I got into my car and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't put the key in the ignition. She wasn't just framing me. She was drugging him. She was painting us both as insane so that when the financial house of cards collapsed, she could blame the crazy husband and the crazy daughter. I drove back to Linden Vale in a daze. When I got to the motel, Ethan was waiting with news. Marisol called. He said, I looked up. Marisol Dent. The accountant? What did she say? She remembered something. Ethan said, about a file. Martin called it the shadow file. He kept it on an encrypted drive. He told Marisol that if anything happened to him, the file was the key. Where's the drive? I asked. Marisol doesn't know, Ethan said. But she said Martin was terrified of being framed. He told her specifically, if I go public, Diane will say I am the one embezzling. She will say I am the one with the gambling problem or the dementia. That tracks, I said, pacing the small room. Lenora said Diane was hinting that Martin needed medication. They are setting up an insanity defense for him, preemptively. Ethan opened his laptop. There is more, he said. Calvin did some digging on the federal investigator Martin was supposed to meet. He turned the screen toward me. It was a call log from a government hotline. Your father called the tip line 3 weeks ago, Ethan said. He was anonymous, but the call duration was 40 minutes. He scheduled an in-person intake for last Thursday, the day he disappeared. I said, exactly. But look at the notes. I leaned in. The internal log, which Calvin had somehow acquired, had a note. Source failed to appear. Attempted callback. Number disconnected. He didn't just miss the meeting. I said, he was intercepted on his way to it. The reality of the danger settled over us. This wasn't just white-collar crime. This was kidnapping. This was witness tampering. The next morning, Wednesday, I went to the front desk of the motel to get coffee. The clerk, a bored teenager with blue hair, flagged me down. Package for you, she said. Arrived via courier this morning. I frowned. Nobody knew we were here. We had only told Paige and Calvin. I took the package. It was a small, plain cardboard box. No return label. Just my name, Zoe Clark, and the address of the motel. I took it back to the room. Ethan was in the shower. I sat on the bed and opened it carefully. Inside, wrapped in bubble wrap, was a black USB flash drive. There was no note in the box, but there was a folded piece of paper taped to the drive itself. For Zoe only. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Martin's. My heart hammered against my ribs. I plugged the drive into Ethan's laptop. I scanned it for viruses. Paranoia was my new normal. And then opened the folder. There was a single PDF file titled Letter, PDF. I opened it. It wasn't a legal document. It was a scan of a handwritten letter. The date at the top was October 7th, 1 week before the wedding. My dearest Zoe, if you are reading this, it means I failed. It means I didn't make it to the church. I need you to know something, and I need you to believe it. No matter what your mother or anyone else tells you, I did not stay away because I don't love you. I stayed away because I was trying to draw the fire away from you. I triggered an investigation. Zoe, I finally did it. I called the DOJ. I have been compiling the records for months. The West Haven transfers, the shell accounts, the fake board minutes. It is worse than you think. It is a Ponzi scheme wrapped in a charity, but Diane found out. She has access to my email. She knows I am the whistleblower, and she made it very clear. If I show up at your wedding, if I stand next to you, she will link you to the crimes. She will produce the documents with your forged signature and hand them to the FBI herself. She told me that if I disappeared, she would leave you out of it. She promised that if I went away quietly, she would let you have your life. I know she is lying. I know she will use you anyway. But I had to try. I had to buy time. I am going to try to get to the investigator on Thursday. If I make it, this nightmare ends. If I don't, if they stop me, then you are on your own, my brave girl, if they are silent. It is because someone told them to be. But silence is not the same as agreement. Do not trust the family. Do not trust the lawyers. Trust Ethan, and trust yourself. The evidence is not on this drive. This drive is just a message. The evidence is where we used to hide from the thunder. I love you. I will always walk with you, even if you can't see me. Dad. I sat there, staring at the screen, tears dripping onto the keyboard. He hadn't abandoned me. He had sacrificed himself. He had negotiated a deal with the devil. His freedom for my safety. If I disappear, she will leave you out of it. But Diane had reneged on the deal. She had disappeared him and destroyed me. Ethan came out of the bathroom. He saw the letter. He read it over my shoulder, his hand gripping my shoulder so hard it hurt. Where we used to hide from the thunder. He read aloud. What does that mean? I wiped my eyes. When I was little, I said, my voice thick. We had a storm cellar at the lake house. I was terrified of thunder. Dad used to take me down there and we would play cards by lantern light until the storm passed. The lake house, Ethan said, the one Diane locked down. The evidence is there. I said, the shadow file. It is in the storm cellar. We have to go get it. Ethan said, we can't. I said, the security system is upgraded. Diane has cameras everywhere. If we set foot on that property, she will have us arrested for trespassing before we get to the door. Then we need a distraction. Ethan said, or a warrant. We can't get a warrant without evidence, and we can't get the evidence without a warrant. I said, it is a catch-22. Ethan's phone rang. It was his business partner, Greg. Greg ran a small architectural firm with Ethan. He was a good guy, steady and loyal. Ethan answered it. Hey, Greg. What? Ethan's face went pale. He motioned for me to listen. He put it on speaker. I didn't want to tell you, Greg was saying, sounding agitated, but the bank called our business line today. They said they received an anonymous tip that one of the partners was under investigation for charity fraud and money laundering. They are freezing our line of credit. Ethan, until it is cleared up. Ethan closed his eyes. Did they say my name? Ethan asked. No, Greg said. They said the partner associated with the Clark family. Ethan, what is going on? We have payroll on Friday. If the credit line is frozen, checks are going to bounce. I am sorry. Greg, Ethan said, it is a mistake, a malicious attack. I will fix it. He hung up. He looked at me. They are attacking you. I said, they are attacking us. Ethan corrected. They are trying to starve us out. They know we need money to fight them. If they kill my business, we can't pay Paige. We can't pay Calvin. He sat down on the bed, looking defeated for the first time. They are going to destroy everything I built, he whispered, just because I married you. I looked at him. I looked at the letter from my father. Trust Ethan. My mother had tried to stop the wedding to keep me isolated. When that failed, she tried to destroy the marriage by destroying the foundation of our lives. She wanted Ethan to blame me. She wanted him to look at his frozen bank account and look at his ruined reputation and decide that loving Zoe Clark was too expensive. She wanted me to be toxic. I stood up. I went to the closet and pulled out a clean white shirt and a pair of dark slacks. Get dressed. I said, What? Ethan asked. Get dressed. We are going out. Where? To the courthouse. I said, Here, in Linden Vale. Ethan looked confused. Zoe, we are already married. We did the ceremony. No. I said, we did a ceremony that was interrupted by ghosts, a ceremony where I walked down the aisle alone, a ceremony that isn't legally binding because we never mailed the license. I hadn't told him that part. In the chaos of the wedding day, the license had been left on the table in the bridal suite. It had never been signed by the officiant and mailed. Technically, legally, we were still single. We are going to the courthouse, I said, my voice steady and hard. And we are going to file a civil marriage license. Today, right now. But why? Ethan asked. Because, I said, Diane thinks she can leverage our relationship. She thinks she can make you leave me by squeezing your wallet. She thinks that if she makes it hard enough, you will walk away. I walked over to him and took his face in my hands. I want to be legally bound to you. Ethan, I want it on the public record. I want the state of this Commonwealth to know that your debts are my debts, and my fight is your fight. I want to take away her leverage. If we are married, truly married, she can't testify against me without spousal privilege complications. She can't claim I am incompetent without fighting you as my next of kin. And more importantly, I added, my voice cracking, I want to prove to her that she can't pause my life. She can empty the chairs, but she can't stop the union. Ethan stared at me, the fear in his eyes slowly replaced by a fierce, burning light. He stood up. He kissed me. Let's do it. We drove to the Linden Vale Courthouse. It was a brick building that smelled of floor wax and old coffee. It wasn't the alder and ash conservatory. There were no flowers. There was no string quartet. We waited in line behind a couple registering a boat and a man paying a parking ticket. When we got to the clerk's window, a kindly woman named Brenda looked at our paperwork. Witness? She asked. We didn't have one. I looked around the lobby. There was a janitor mopping the floor. Excuse me. I said, Sir, would you mind witnessing a marriage? The man, whose name tag read Earl, leaned on his mop. He looked at us. He looked at the desperation in our eyes. Sure thing, honey, he said. We stood before the clerk. We raised our right hands. We swore that the information was true. Do you take this man? Brenda asked. I looked at Ethan. I didn't see the business partner who was losing his credit line. I didn't see the man who was sleeping in a motel to hide from my mother. I saw the only person in the world who had seen the storm coming and stayed in the rain with me. I do. I said, Do you take this woman? Ethan squeezed my hand. I do. Brenda stamped the document. Clack thud. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It sounded like a gavel. It sounded like a door slamming shut on my mother's fingers. Congratulations, Brenda said. You are married. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright, cold October sun. I held the certified copy of the marriage license in my hand like a weapon. We are going to send a copy to Paige, I said, and we are going to send a copy to the bank, and we are going to send a copy to Diane. We got back in the car. Ethan turned to me. So, Mrs. Hale, he said, what do we do now? I looked at the road ahead. Now, I said, we go to the lake house, and we find the thunder. But you said the cameras. I know. I said, but I remembered something else about the lake house, something Diane doesn't know. What? There is a storm drain. I said, it runs from the creek bed under the fence and comes out near the cellar. It is tight, and it is muddy, but it is not alarmed. Ethan started the car. Then let's get muddy, he said. I looked at the license one last time before tucking it into the glove box. My father had written, if they can't reach me, they will reach you. They had reached me, but they hadn't broken me. They had forged me into something harder, something sharp, and I was coming home. The morning of the hearing arrived with a sky the color of wet slate. It was Thursday, 5 days after the wedding that wasn't, and the air in Briar Glen felt heavy, pressurized, like the moments before a thunderstorm breaks. I stood in front of the mirror in our motel room in Linden Vale, smoothing the lapels of my charcoal suit. It was the same suit I had worn to my interview for the head librarian position 3 years ago. It was practical. It was severe. It was armor. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, tying his shoes. He looked tired. The circles under his eyes were dark bruises, a testament to the sleepless nights we had spent poring over the documents from the flash drive and the few scraps of paper we had managed to salvage from the lake house storm drain before the security sensors triggered a silent alarm. We didn't get the full shadow file. We had been too slow. But we had enough to make Paige Harmon think we had a fighting chance. "Ready?" Ethan asked. Standing up. "No," I said. "But let's go anyway." We met Paige and Calvin Rusk outside the county courthouse. It was a grand, imposing building with white pillars that were meant to inspire justice but mostly just inspired intimidation. Paige looked grim. She pulled us into a quiet alcove near the metal detectors. "We have a problem," she said. My stomach dropped. A problem. Of course there was a problem. "What is it?" I asked. Calvin stepped forward. He held a folder in his hands. I ran a trace on the Clark family outreach accounts again this morning. He said, just to see if they were moving assets before the hearing. They weren't, but I found a transaction I missed before. He opened the folder and pointed to a highlighted line. "It is a transfer," he said. $50,000. It moved from the Outreach General Fund into an account under the name Zoe Clark Weddings LLC. I stared at him. "I don't have an LLC." I said, "You do now," Calvin said darkly. "It was registered 2 weeks ago. The articles of incorporation have your signature, and the bank account associated with it. It was opened online using your social security number." "Why?" I asked. "Why give me $50,000? "To frame you," Paige said. Her voice was sharp, clinical. "Think about it. Zoe. They knew Martin was going to blow the whistle. They knew he was going to expose the embezzlement. So they created a narrative. Zoe Clark, the unstable daughter, stole $50,000 to pay for her lavish wedding. The family tried to cover it up to protect her. But she had a breakdown when they confronted her. I felt the blood drain from my face. "It explains everything," Ethan said, his voice rising in anger. "The billing issues, the reason they canceled the vendors. They were trying to make it look like the money ran out because I stole it? Because you stole it," Paige corrected. "This transfer is dated 3 days before the wedding. If we walk into that courtroom and accuse them of financial abuse, they are going to produce this. They are going to say you are the thief." I leaned against the cold stone wall. It was a perfect trap. If I fought them, they would destroy me. If I stayed silent, they owned me. "What do we do?" I whispered. "We stick to the script." Paige said, "We are here to contest the lien on the West Haven property. We are here to prove that the signature on that real estate document is a forgery. If we can prove one signature is fake, the whole house of cards starts to shake. But you have to be ready. Zoe, they are going to come at you." We walked through the metal detectors. I felt like I was walking into a lion's den armed with a toothpick. The courtroom was small and smelled of old wood and floor wax. We took our seats on the left side. Then, the doors opened. My mother walked in. Diane Clark did not look like a woman under siege. She looked like royalty. She was wearing a navy blue suit with a single strand of pearls, the picture of maternal grace. She walked with her head high, nodding politely to the bailiff. Grant walked beside her. My brother looked less confident. He was pale, sweating slightly in his expensive suit. He wouldn't meet my eyes. And behind them, flanking them like a guard dog, was Theodore Vance, Uncle Ted. The man who had given me candy when I was a child was now carrying a briefcase filled with evidence designed to put me in prison. They sat at the opposing table. Diane leaned over and whispered something to Grant. He nodded, looking miserable. She patted his hand. It was a performance. Look at us, the loving family, dealing with the prodigal daughter. The judge entered. Judge Holloway. He was an older man with bushy eyebrows and a reputation for impatience. "This is a hearing regarding the motion to vacate a lien filed by West Haven Holdings against the property of Zoe Clark," Judge Holloway said. "Ms. Harmon, you may proceed." Paige stood up. She was brilliant. She laid out the timeline. She showed the discrepancies in the notary stamps. She argued that I had no knowledge of the West Haven property. and that my signature had been misappropriated by the Clark family outreach to secure risky real estate loans. Then it was Uncle Ted's turn. He stood up slowly, buttoning his jacket. He looked at me with a sad, disappointed smile. "Your Honor," he said, his voice rich and baritone, "this motion is a tragedy. It is the result of a family dispute that has spiraled out of control. The petitioner, Ms. Clark, has a history of emotional volatility. Objection." Page said, "Relevance. It goes to the credibility of the claim." "Your Honor," Ted said smoothly, "the defense asserts that Ms. Clark fully authorized these transactions as part of her role in the family trust. We have affidavits from the notary. We have emails." He picked up a piece of paper. "And we have evidence that Ms. Clark has benefited significantly from family funds. Specifically, a transfer of $50,000 made just last week to a business entity under her control." He waved the paper. "My mother is trying to help her daughter. Your Honor, she secured this property to build equity for Zoe. This lawsuit is nothing more than a tantrum thrown by a young woman who is upset that her parents refused to pay for a wedding that was ill-advised." I gripped the edge of the table. My knuckles turned white. Ill-advised. Diane was looking at me. Her expression was one of perfect, practiced concern. "Poor Zoe." Her eyes said, "Look what you made me do." Judge Holloway looked over his glasses at me. "Ms. Clark," he said, "do you wish to speak to these allegations?" Paige touched my arm. She had told me to let her do the talking, but I knew, in that moment, that a lawyer couldn't win this. This wasn't a legal battle. It was a story battle, and I needed to tell a different story. I stood up. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "Zoe." Paige hissed warningly. I ignored her. I walked to the front of the room. I didn't look at Diane. I looked at the judge. "Your Honor," I said, keeping my voice low and steady, "Mr. Vance is telling you a story about a benevolent mother and an ungrateful child. It is a good story. It is the story they have been telling Briar Glen for 30 years. I took a breath. But the truth is simpler. I did not sign those papers. I did not authorize that transfer. I did not ask for a $50,000 loan. I turned and looked at Grant. He flinched. My family did not protect me. I said, "They used me. They used my name to hide their debts. They used my credit to leverage their assets. And when I tried to leave, when I tried to marry a man who would have asked questions, they tried to destroy me." My voice shook. Just once, on the word destroy. I swallowed and steadied myself. "I am not unstable. Your Honor, I am not confused. I am a woman who woke up on her wedding day to an empty room because her father was threatened into silence." I looked at Diane, and I am done being the collateral damage for their ambition. The courtroom was silent. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. Diane's face hadn't changed, but her eyes had gone hard, like flint. Judge Holloway cleared his throat. "Thank you. Ms. Clark, we will take this under advisement." The hearing ended 20 minutes later. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a defeat. We had put it on the record. We walked out into the hallway. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me lightheaded. "Zoe," I turned. Standing near the water fountain were 3 women, Aunt Lenora, Cousin Sarah, and my great-aunt Martha. They looked terrified. They were holding their purses tight to their chests. Lenora stepped forward. Her eyes were red. "We heard." She whispered. "We were in the back row. We heard what you said." I looked at them. These were the people who had ghosted me. "I am sorry," Lenora said, crying openly now. "I am so sorry. Zoe, when Diane told us you were sick, when she said you asked for privacy, we believed her. She made it sound so plausible. I thought you abandoned us." Cousin Sarah said, "I thought you hated us for not being rich enough for your new life." That is what she told us. I looked at their faces. They weren't villains. They were sheep. They had been herded by a wolf in a Chanel suit. "It is okay," I said, though I wasn't sure if it was. I realized then that the isolation had been a two-way mirror. She had told me they didn't care, and she had told them I didn't care. She had severed the connection from both ends. Suddenly, the double doors at the entrance of the courthouse banged open. A commotion erupted near the security checkpoint. "Sir, you cannot bring that in here," a guard shouted. "I have a right to be here." A voice cracked. I froze. I knew that voice. I turned toward the entrance. A man was pushing through the metal detector. He was wearing a dirty brown jacket that was 2 sizes too big for him. His hair was wild, gray and unkempt. His face was gaunt, the cheekbones protruding sharply under skin that looked like gray parchment. It was Martin Clark, my father. He looked like a man who had walked through hell. He was shaking. He was leaning heavily on the arm of a woman I didn't recognize. A severe-looking woman in a black windbreaker who was scanning the crowd with professional paranoia. "Dad?" I whispered. He looked up. His eyes found mine. They were wide, terrified, and filled with a desperate, frantic love. "Zoe!" he rasped. He tried to run toward me, but he stumbled. The woman in the windbreaker caught him. At that moment, the courtroom doors behind me opened. Diane and Grant walked out. Diane stopped. She saw Martin. For a second, just 1 second, I saw the mask slip. I saw genuine, unadulterated fear. Her mouth opened slightly. Her hand went to her throat. But then, the training kicked in. The years of spinning the narrative. She stepped forward. She opened her arms. Her face transformed into a mask of relief and pity. "Martin," she cried softly. "Oh, thank God. There you are." She walked toward him, ignoring the stunned silence of the hallway. "We have been so worried," she said, her voice loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "You wandered off. We didn't know if you had taken your medication. Oh, you poor dear. You look exhausted." She was doing it, right in front of me. She was rewriting reality in real time. She was turning his escape into a dementia episode. Martin recoiled from her. He shrank back against the woman in the windbreaker. "Stay away from me," he hissed. Diane didn't stop. She kept coming, her smile fixed, her eyes predatory. "Grant, get the car," she ordered over her shoulder. "Dad is having an episode. We need to get him to the clinic." "No!" Martin shouted. His voice cracked. It was a sound of pure desperation. He lunged away from the woman and stumbled toward me. "Dad!" I ran to him. I caught him. He smelled of sweat and fear and old coffee. He felt frail in my arms, like a bird with hollow bones. "Zoe," he gasped, clutching my lapels. "Listen to me. I am here. Dad, I am here. I didn't stay away because I didn't love you," he choked out, tears cutting tracks through the grime on his face. "I stayed away because I knew what they would do next. And I was right. Diane was almost upon us." "Zoe, step aside," she said, her voice icy. "Your father is unwell. He is confusing you." I looked at her over his shoulder. "He seems perfectly clear to me." I said. Martin fumbled inside his jacket. His hands were shaking violently. He pulled out a thick, sealed manila envelope. It was stained with something that looked like oil or coffee. On the front, in shaky black marker, were the words, "If I don't make it back." "Take it," he whispered, shoving it into my hands. "What is it?" I asked. "It is the choice," he said. "Martin!" Diane barked. "That is enough." She signaled to Grant, who grabbed Martin's arm. The woman in the windbreaker stepped in, blocking Grant. "I am a federal agent," the woman said. "Step back." The hallway went silent. Diane froze. "A federal agent?" "Mr. Clark is under protective custody," the woman said. "He is a material witness." Diane's face went white. For the first time in my life, I saw her truly powerless. Martin looked at me one last time. "You have to decide." "Zoe," he whispered, "you have to decide whether to burn it down now, or wait until I can finish it safely." "What do you mean?" "If you use what is in that envelope, they go to jail, but the foundation collapses. The money for the families stops." And he swallowed hard. "And they will come for you with everything they have left before they go down." The agent pulled him away. "We have to move." "Sir," she said. "It is not safe here." Martin let go of me. "I love you." "Zoe," he said. Then he was gone. The agent hustled him out the side door, into a waiting SUV. I stood alone in the hallway, the envelope heavy in my hand. Diane stood 10 feet away. She wasn't looking at Martin. She was looking at the envelope. "Give that to me." "Zoe," she said. Her voice was low, dangerous. I looked at her. I looked at Grant, who looked like he was about to vomit. I looked at Lenora and the aunts, who were huddled together in shock. "No," I said. "Zoe," Diane said, taking a step forward. "You don't know what you're holding. That isn't just numbers. That is leverage. If you release that, you destroy this family. You already destroyed this family." I said, "I am just holding the receipt." I turned and walked away. Ethan was at my side instantly. Paige and Calvin flanked us. We walked out of the courthouse, past the stunned onlookers, past the security guards. We got into Ethan's car. "Drive," I said. We drove to the edge of town, to a scenic overlook that looked down on the valley. It was quiet there. I looked at the envelope. If I don't make it back. But he had made it back. Or, at least, he was alive. He was in custody. I tore open the seal. Inside was a stack of papers, copies of bank transfers, emails between Diane and Uncle Ted, and a list of names: Mayor Higgins, Police Chief Miller, Judge Holloway. It was a payroll list. The Clark family outreach wasn't just embezzling money, it was buying the town. And at the bottom of the stack was a note: "Zoe, if you are reading this, I am either dead or in custody. These documents prove the corruption. They prove the bribes. If you turn them in, the investigation goes nuclear. Diane will be arrested. Grant will be arrested. Half the town council will be indicted. But be warned, if you pull this trigger, there is no going back. The backlash will be immediate. You will be the woman who destroyed Briar Glen's most beloved charity. You will be hated. Or, you can wait. You can let me try to negotiate a plea deal that keeps you out of the crossfire. You can burn these papers and walk away. Go to Hawaii. Be happy. The choice is yours. You are the CEO of your own life now. Dad." I looked at the documents. I looked at the names of the powerful men who had smiled at me at fundraisers while they stole from the poor. I looked at Ethan. He was watching me, his hand on the steering wheel. "What is it?" he asked. "It is the bomb." I said. I looked out at the town below. It looked so peaceful, so perfect. My mother had spent her life building walls to keep the ugly truth inside. My father had spent his life trying to find a door. I rolled down the window. The cold air hit my face. I wasn't going to Hawaii. I wasn't going to run. I picked up the phone. I dialed the number for the federal agent who had taken my father. "I am not waiting," I whispered to the wind. I looked at Ethan. "Let's finish it." Thank you for listening to On My Wedding Day, Not a Single Family Member Showed Up. I hope you enjoyed this journey into the dark secrets of the Clark family. This story explores how the people who are supposed to protect us can sometimes be the ones we need protection from. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed Zoe's fight for the truth, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of betrayal, resilience, and justice. Share your thoughts in English. What would you have done with the envelope? Would you have burned it or burned them down? Until next time.